Today, we will be talking about Pressbooks, and the way that we run the labs is, where'd my markers go? We start off by going around and saying, hi, I'm so-and-so, and this is what I'd like to know about the topic of Pressbooks. And we try to be very responsive to the needs of the folks who come, so that you don't leave thinking, oh, this was a waste of my time. We didn't talk at all about what I wanted to talk about. So help us out. Tell us what you're interested in knowing about. Who would like to start?
I will always start. My name is Cliff. I work with Do It, and I'm actually here in a support capacity. I don't particularly use Pressbook from the end user side, but questions will come, and I'm here to learn what you need to know.
Oh, I should have one more thing. Tell us if you have used Pressbooks at all. So when you go around. Cliff, have you opened up it at all?
I've opened it up.
Okay, that's good.
I'm Peter Van Cannon. I'm faculty in the kinesiology department. I've used Pressbooks for about a year and a half now. When I started to redesign an online course that I've been working on. And John asked me to share my experiences, and I'm happy to do so. I think it's actually I don't consider myself an expert, but I've used it, and I haven't gotten to, incorporate all the features yet. But I like it, actually. The support is good. Andrew? And it has a lot of nice features that, it's kind of, a medium way between, the editor pages in Canvas and having templates for a lot of the commonly useful things of shaded boxes and formatting things, and my knowledge of HTML is kind of limited, and so I kind of use it for convenience more than anything else.
So we'll put that down as sharing some experiences. Very good. Andrew.
Thanks for that ringing endorsement. I'm Andrew Turner. I'm a sysadmin on the Learning EW Madison team. I specifically support Pressbooks and other content authoring tools, but mostly Pressbooks. So I'm mostly here to hopefully answer any questions that come up.
Great, thank you. Lynn.
Hi, I'm Lynn Prost. I teach in the biochemistry department, and I am currently working on developing a lab manual using Pressbooks. So instead of fully just print protocols for the students, it would have things like videos and photos and practice problems sort of built into the digital interface. So I'm also happy to share what my experience has been. I've liked using it. I think it's pretty easy. It integrates well with Canvas, if that's something that people like to do. So.
All right, so we'll talk about converting from paper handouts to Pressbooks. Good. Martine.
I'm Martine Anderson. I work for Do It AT. I love Pressbooks. I think it's awesome and a great. There's a lot of different flexibility with it. I've been using it for a while since Steelwag staff kind of snuck me into the account over at LSS. Right now, I have 3 different projects going in Pressbooks. I have a teaching manual for our TAs in our undergraduate anatomy courses, a physics active teaching guide that will help sustain the kind of work we're doing over physics, and we can give that to our new instructors. And then I've built a couple of modules to walk through, this is for my dissertation work, but to help train some students through a thinking process. So the big problem and my big question is, how can we get what the students are doing out? So right now I use model answers, but we know that our students, I kind of have to be coy when they ask, is it graded? It's sort of graded, but not through Pressbooks.
All right, it was a Pressbooks to Canvas grade book. and maybe there's some information or not on that.
And there's opportunities for students to do writing too, so how can we pull out their writing in a way where we can kind of assess their answers? You know, we could, in CSCR, we used to be able to see the output of their written work.
All right, assessment, good.
I'm
And, let's go to Lauren. Lauren. Let's have you type something up, and then we'll come visit you when you come back. Margaret.
I am Margaret Murphy. I'm a grad student in the high school, and I'm here to help John with the active teaching lab.
All right, fantastic. Ruth.
I'm Ruth Olson in folklore, which is in the process of becoming part of German Nordic Slavic. And I'm ignorant and curious, and I'm thinking about this in terms of an online course and the materials for that. But I'm also just talked with a teacher who, a student who published this as part of a course where the students put together an exhibit and published essays about the exhibit, and I'm just super curious about that. So.
And is that the digital salon that they did that for?
No,
the exhibit?
it was actually an exhibit that Ann Smart Martin did that was at the Historium in Mount Horeb, and they did a press book with a bunch of essays about the pieces, the objects that were part of the exhibit.
I think that we talked about her in the activity sheet, which I'm going to remember when we get done with you to talk a little bit more about this. Good. And I see that Lauren has now something. She says, "Hello, I'm a PhD student in planning and landscape architecture, interested in creating a professional certification for farmers market managers." And she's curious to learn how it might facilitate that kind of adult education. She has never used Pressbooks. Good. Thanks for being here, Lauren. Justine.
Thank you. And I'm Justine, and I'm the new Teaching and Learning Service Coordinator at WISC, which is Wisconsin Collaboratory for Enhanced Learning. So we're located over Wenton College. And I'm new to this position, and after 10 years, I made it back to UW-Madison campus. So I haven't learned about Pressbooks, so I just want to know more about how I can use it and how I can work with faculty about this, because it seems to be like a very good resource for faculty and students. So I just want to learn more about it. And I apologize, I was late and I need to leave early because I have back-to-back meeting today. It's just like, sorry.
It's all right. So getting started.
I'm Karen Kravinow from the School of Medicine and Public Health, and Megan Cutter and I have been working with Pressbooks for maybe 3 years or so. Started by just digitizing Word documents more or less, and over time have added all kinds of interactivity with H5P, video, incorporation. Students absolutely love it, and we just kind of wait to hear what's new and try and incorporate new things. The next thing I want to do, and I don't know if Pressbooks is the right place, is start to have our summer PA, our professional students, submit questions, like exam-style questions, and haven't quite figured out the best platform to do that. Thinking about possibly in Pressbooks, like just making a dedicated book that the students can edit. In Canvas, students can't edit quizzes, so that's a limitation from what I can tell. So I'm just looking for the right platform that students can edit, and it comes out in a question style, not just a Word document with a bunch of text.
All right, I'm going to put that down as student-created content.
Yeah, and we're gonna, in the summer, we're gonna have some student-created content, and one of the options we've given to the OT and PT students is to make some kind of chapter as an thing to explain the structure.
Awesome, fantastic way to get the students to make something meaningful and authentic that is durable, that has an effect later on, and saves instructors time. That's good. Charles.
Hi, Charles. I teach in the history department. I have a specific, so I'm just learning a little bit about Pressbooks, so I'm curious. It seems like there's a lot of different possibilities. Specifically, I talked to James McKay at the start of the semester at Do It, and I have a group final project which is 5 to 7 students working on a film related to Korean history, which is what I teach. And he recommended, I asked him for a platform, and he recommended Pressbooks.
Very good.
I'm doing what I shouldn't be doing in the sense that I couldn't learn it all before signing it, and it's actually due in a few weeks. And so it's in a situation in which I'll be learning, and then the students will be learning how to do this. So I'm trying to figure out, like, get a grasp of things, see how I could teach students the basics, and I think a lot of them will be a lot quicker than I am. It seems like I create a book or books and then invite them as consult, or I can't remember the title, contributors to go in and put stuff up. So
I'm going to call that keeping up with change, because you had also mentioned it, and I think that's a big topic, sort of almost an umbrella topic over this. But Kenny.
My name's Kenny. I'm a grad student in the Kines department, and I've never used Pressbooks, so I second the getting started idea, but also kind of like for those who do have experience, like common pitfalls or to avoid that new people can get caught up in.
All right. And
my name is Naomi. I'm an instructional consultant with the Excel Initiative and MTLE. I'm working on a dissertation that uses Pressbooks to create an open pedagogy project for students. So I'm very interested in Karen, your point about the drawing students into the active creation.
Are you publishing your dissertation in Pressbooks?
Yes. There might be some limitations from the grad school about formatting, and we must absolutely.
That was my question.
Yeah, well, and so like the annotation layer, the hypothesis annotation layer that you can integrate for student contributions as part of this as a pedagogy object, the H5P activities that you can incorporate are, so part of the challenge is also to say, like, if we've got a fuddy-duddy sort of submission process, how do we translate what is a very active and engaged resource into fuddy-duddy PDF?
Turning from sort of a hyperlink thing to a linear
and
version.
hosting it in ProQuest and
yes.
Yeah.
ProQuest. All right. So, how many of you have ever used WordPress? All right. Is it fair to say that if you understand WordPress, you are well on your way to understanding Pressbooks?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay. So, in some ways, that's a good. I think that's a good start. Experts tell me if I'm wrong. I heard some. All right. I saw this. Was that from you, Margine?
It was, yeah. There's just more to do in Pressbooks.
There's more options.
So more to break.
All right. More complexity. Very good. And every year they keep adding new things, potentially. And on the activity sheet, it talks about the growing guide to Pressbooks. It's not just a definitive thing. It is dynamic. It keeps on changing. And since I'm holding this up, I'm reminding myself that I need to talk about this. At the very top, there are instructions for joining the Canvas course that we have for this. And in that Canvas course, there is a link to the activity sheet, and both embedded and its own version here. And at the very bottom of the activity sheet, there are opportunities for you to edit and add other questions that we have. I think Margaret is already populating that. That's fantastic. If you have other notes and things that you want to, you can do that. The nice thing about this is, versus the linear version, all of the links on this work on this. So it's a resource that kind of turns a very finite resource into a less finite resource. Still finite, I guess. All right. Let's start with getting started. What, other than if you've already used WordPress, what else is there about Pressbooks that is, how does one get started with it?
There's a link on here to the Pressbooks user guide. Is that the one that's also itself a Pressbook? Mm-hmm. Yes. That was how I started.
So that is right here, the Pressbooks user guide. Goes into this. You can read the book. If you keep on scrolling down, there's a table of contents. So very easy to navigate. In their 5-step guide to using Pressbooks, they explain the non-UW way to use Pressbooks. Also on the activity sheet, maybe above it, there is a link to the that first Pressbooks link. Right here is the link to the UW-Madison version of it, wisc.edu. And this one has more local information about how to use it. Is that, am I saying this right?
I think most of our local information is actually in the knowledge base documents.
Okay.
There is also a Pressbooks 101 book that Naomi and Steele worked on. Some of the information in that is a little bit outdated, but generally it will get you on the
All right, so the knowledge base, kb.wisc.edu, can also get you, if you do a search for Pressbooks, that'll get you there as well. And I think that we actually have links to it on this page, but we should double check. It's fairly easy to get into. I think it helps if you have a plan, as many things do, although I think it's perfectly acceptable to make a crappy book for starters and just dig in and explore, much like you a sandbox in Canvas, and try things out. And if there's anything that is learning by mistakes, it's create one without a plan, and then you say, oh, I have to do this, and that helps you learn what is more required, better options for the future, which again we're going to talk about tomorrow. What else? What else am I forgetting?
I think one of the biggest learning curves for me was getting used to the nomenclature. Especially, there's a space called organize, and that's how you put your book together. And they have something called a part, and then something called a chapter, and they don't have something called pages. And it was trying to understand that the part is the container, like a chapter, and a chapter is a page, and it's a scrolling page. So it's not what you think of as a chapter where you flip. There you go.
And yes, so here's my account, and I'll tell you, all of our active teaching labs are in a Pressbook. That e-journal that is listed on the very end of this, those are really bad examples of using Pressbook well, because basically we just take our WordPress pages and we throw them in there without doing much formatting beyond what we've had on our regular Pressbook pages, WordPress pages. But, so what Margie's talking about here is under Organize. And you can see that there's parts, chapters, front matter, back matter, glossary terms, and trash. These are not parts of your WordPress nomenclature. So who can explain what these pieces are? What's a part? Naomi.
One thing, I do a lot with Pressbooks, so one thing that you can sort of remember as you try to hold these terms in your mind is that Pressbooks was originally created for ebook publishing, and it's still really invested in textbooks. So when you talk about the chapter page, in the web text it's going to look like a big column of text, but for the purposes of an export, it's going to act like a chapter with individual pages. So you can think about that as like the base level section for what in a book would be a multi-page resource. A part is just a way of kind of segmenting different kind of chunks of this resource into their own units. You can write on the thing that's called a part, but I like to imagine that as kind of how you can write on a manila folder. You can hold content, but really the stuff that's worthwhile is inside. So it's an organizing principle and a surface to write on, but primarily an organizing principle.
Almost like a section?
Yes.
Okay, so if you have a 3-section book, each section might have 3 chapters, and each chapter would have pages or whatever within that. Okay. Good. And then chapters, are those are not individual pages, or are they individual pages?
They're individual pages, but when you have an export, they turn into something with multiple pages that you can flip through. So it's like a website.
Okay.
Page.
Electronically, you can scroll through a chapter, and then when you print it, you turn the pages. Or probably Is it set up on that way for an iPad or device where you flip through rather than flip up?
That's
Scroll?
another resource, yeah, but mostly.
Okay.
If you're viewing a Pressbook on an iPad, you would be scrolling through it, like if you went to the website in Safari. But if it was like exported as an EPUB, for example.
Okay.
If you're using an EPUB reader, it would treat it as a book.
And let's just talk, Karen, you had one more thing about this.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that the chapters can be extraordinarily long, so we found that building links within the chapters was really important for navigation. So there would be, here are your learning objectives at the top, or kind of tabulated the organization of that chapter. And then you can make links to jump down within the chapter to different, I may say sections, whatever, however you want to organize it. So for you or the students, it's a lot easier to jump around within it instead of just scroll indefinitely and go, oh yeah, that part I want to get to is at the bottom of what's like 10 pages equivalent of writing. And you can jump around really easily by just putting in those, they're called anchors.
So it's almost like a table of contents that you can just click on that and go down to that and then go back up, back and forth. And that's a good way to organize it. And then yes, when you export it, you can export it as or you can keep it as an HTML WordPress style thing where you scroll this way. You can turn it into an EPUB. So on your phone or, and if I'm ever saying anything wrong here, I'm looking around for affirmation that I'm getting this right. Okay, good. So as an EPUB, or if you published it as an electronic PDF, you'd be able to view it in these other formats. Good.
And I'll add to your point about creating anchors. That's one good way of creating a navigation. But they just added a feature that you can turn on in your book, where if you have a certain kind of header in the text, it'll show up in the table of contents as a subsection, so your students can navigate a little bit more easily there.
I'm going to make use headers its own page, or its own point, because this is one of those things that has changed with digital publishing, even in word processing, right? When I started my dissertation, I did not start with headers and styles, but about one chapter in, I realized, oh my gosh, I need to have heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, and heading 4 and heading 5. In order to keep organization useful for me and to be able to collapse it and see what the different parts were so that I could just keep it straight in my head instead of a massive long thing. So yes, headers are good, and it automatically does these table of content like things is what I'm hearing.
If you could you can turn that on or off, so it'll allow you to turn on a section level table of contents by heading in I believe it's
almost like
appearance.
Yeah. And then theme options, I think.
Theme details?
Yeah.
Oh, options right here.
Or yeah.
There you go.
It gets you to the same place.
All right.
Somewhere in here.
Where your mouse was a second ago. Enable 2-level table of contents below chapter label. You have it checked.
Yep.
Oh, there it is. Okay, that's good. And that, in some ways, Google Docs has the same thing where you can see the things on the side while your body of text is over here. Okay, good. So that's useful. We could go through one, but I'm going to let you do that instead, and we'll go. We'll revisit some of these as we talk more about it. All right. Any other questions about getting started? Actually, what we've done is we've kind of jumped in a little bit deeper, but are there any other big points to know on that from those of you who've gone through that experience?
I would just say that if you're interested in ever getting help, you can reach out to the Learning UW Madison team and we'll set up a meeting to get you started. So
Is that through the Do It Help Desk or is that through Learning UW?
It can be through the Do It Help Desk. You could also just email Learning UW support at doit.wisc.edu. I think the email is sprinkled throughout this activity sheet.
Fantastic. Good job, activity sheet maker. All right. Student reactions. You said, Karen, that the students love it. Why?
because we've got so many H5P things to go through, so they'll read a section and then they can answer pretty simplistic practice questions as you go, nothing really high level, but just quick little knowledge checks as they're going through, so they have some feedback on their understanding as they go.
Okay.
May I ask something real quick? So you mean if you have a lesson, then
Yep.
you have your own text and then images and also readings embedded in, like
And you
a
can-
PDF reading?
So you can have text, you can insert like YouTube or other videos, you can have variously structured practice questions for them, and just all in this steady stream. Yep.
For each class session, we'll just have a lesson like that.
Yeah, just depending on the structure of your course, whatever's gonna work that way, yeah. So they love getting that feedback.
Okay, great.
All right, so, and if you are not familiar with H5P, it is h5p.org. They've got all kinds of examples here. They're very easy to create. Right now, they are not generally supported on campus, but they are supported via Pressbooks. So if you have is that a fair way to say it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you have Pressbooks, you can integrate H5P into it. And h5p.org, usually oftentimes I'll go through and do a quick demonstration, but you should give a demonstration, or you should check it out yourself and go through this examples and downloads and just see some of the examples. They're fantastic and they're easy to do, and they're also easy for students to sort of grasp. As far as the interactive elements of it, they're easy to manipulate, maneuver, almost like a Blackboard Collaborate, not Blackboard Collaborate, Adobe Acro, no. Storyline or Captivate, thank you. So many products now.
Oh yeah.
Except much easier to make and much cheaper. So it's there are a lot of pros
And there's
to
more
that.
options too than there is in like Canvas. When you're making Canvas quizzes, there's more just types of questions you can make. So that's why we kind of favor H5P over making a Canvas quiz.
Right. For self-checks.
Yes.
For self-assessment, things where the students, do I understand this myself? Let me quick do this fun little activity, the matching activity or something else, and I can see for myself that I understand it or don't understand it. These do not connect with the Canvas gradebook. So if yet, maybe never. I see a
They
smirk.
kind of do. So like we can do that. It's a bit of a mess and it's not super well supported. But if you're really interested in that, please email learn@uwsupport@duke.wisc.edu to set up a consultation.
All right, but not everybody at once because there's only a few people.
Oh.
Is that
yeah.
fair?
Yeah, not everyone at once.
Just me.
Sorry for the dumb question. So H5P and Pressbook can also be embedded in Canvas.
Yeah. All right, Megan, you're giving a demo of H5P?
No, it's just that you can embed the Pressbooks in your Canvas page
Okay.
too. So if you want your students to view it and stay in Canvas, or you can link out. Either one. Yeah.
Okay.
And which would be a better thing to do? What?
Well, I guess it depends. In the first instance that we did it, I didn't like it because it was like really narrow and it was just scrolling forever. And they've changed how they interact with one another, so it's a little bit better. I'd still stick with the linking out to Pressbooks right now. But as it improves, we might end up. Right now, I keep it in my Canvas course as we, move from year to year because it would actually just take me more time to delete every single link than it is to just keep it there. But I think Andrew is correct that as you, it's still updating as I update Pressbooks. So
Yeah, so if you edit like a chapter within that Pressbook and that chapter is embedded within a Canvas page, it'll
just
yeah.
Still update, yeah.
This is one of the what I think is a lovely thing about it versus Storyline or Captivate. If you are going to change a Storyline interactive activity, you need to re-upload all sorts of files to it. Same thing with Adobe Captivate. But with Pressbooks, it's much like the Google Docs. If I make a change to the Google Doc, it's live. It happens right away here. So that saves you as an instructor a lot of time because you don't have to go through the upload and the download and all of those things. You can just make changes and they're there right away.
There's also the collaboration aspect of if you have Captivate and Storyline, it lives on your computer and your file system somewhere, and anybody, they have to get it from you to access it to edit it. You can't jointly look at things together and edit it. And if you're like me, you will for sure publish something that has like 3 or 4 spelling errors, and then you have to start all over with the upload, and then you'll find the rest of the spelling errors.
So that raises a question about the collaborative elements of H5P. It is a cloud-based tool, so the document resides in the cloud. Can multiple people work on the same document at the same time? Like Google? No. Okay.
Yeah, one person at a time, but I mean, multiple people can change things. It would just have to be
Serial rather
you
than.
You can have multiple people assigned to your Pressbook, and if your H5P element is in there, then multiple people can look at it and work on it and edit it.
So the answer is with H5P, multiple people can.
Not at the same time.
Okay, serially work on it.
Right.
And in Pressbooks, multiple people can serially work on it. And it will tell you that so-and-so is currently working on it, just like in WordPress. So are you sure you want to take away whatever the changes that Andrew has done before you start working on it? So it gives you those warnings. That's good.
Or if you're an instructional designer developing for somebody else, and I don't think we're there yet on our campus with the instructional designers, they don't have to like publish it and send the files to somebody and back. They can just say, log in, look at it, is this what you're thinking?
Great. So checks. Is there any element for commenting? So if I created something and I wanted somebody to look at it, is there a way for them to add comments that aren't, that won't mess it up?
The hypothesis?
Is it via hypothesis?
It's not built in. Yeah,
It's not built in yet.
You can use hypothesis to make annotations. So like you can indicate spaces like where something should be changed, but it's not a feature that's endemic to Pressbooks.
Okay.
But you can turn on the plugin.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it'll.
The hypothesis plugin.
In your book,
Okay.
and it'll act like it's built.
Well.
Hypothesis is a web-based annotation system, so that any web page, you can have multiple people comment on it, highlight pieces, draw boxes around things, draw on it. This lab is not about hypothesis yet, but maybe, and it's, you can see how things start getting complicated. There's Pressbooks. Within Pressbooks, you can add hypothesis. You can add H5P. You can add other things. Pressbooks itself can go inside Canvas. So now you've got Canvas with Pressbooks and hypothesis and H5P in it, and who knows what else down the line. And it can be very hard to get your head around what exactly is happening. So advice number 1 might be start simple. Just start with a text-based, I see lots of emphatic nods, yes. Text-based WordPress site. Think about writing a text-based thing in WordPress, in Pressbooks, and publish it, add a couple graphics, see what it looks like, and say, this is great. You know what I could use right now? A little interactive element. Okay, great. So now I build in a tiny little simple H5P thing, and I put it in one place. And we start that route. All right, who has the most complicated Pressbooks right now? I bet you guys do. You've got hypothesis in there, you've got H5P in there, but you've also been working on it for 3 years, so.
Right.
Okay.
Interactive tables are really cool too.
Interactive tables?
Yeah, you can make tables and you can click on column heads to resort in different ways.
Is that
Search them.
H5P thing? Or is that a
Some
Pressbooks?
other plugin, isn't it? Yeah, it's another plugin.
Another plugin, great.
I forget what it's called. Can you maybe, is it the
Table
table
press?
press?
Yeah, table
Oh,
press.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, so in Pressbooks, do all of the billions of WordPress plugins integrate, or is there a subset? This is a question I don't know the answer to.
I don't think so.
Okay.
What do you mean by subset?
So WordPress has all kinds of plugins that if I'm the site owner, I can add this and I can add this forms thing and all of these things. They break and I've got to maintain them and update them and such. In Pressbooks, do I have that level of control?
Users on our instance don't have the ability to just like add plugins.
Good.
Yeah.
That's good.
It is good because maintaining the ones that we do have and making sure that everything is integrated and working correctly is
A full-time job.
a full-time job, you might
Yeah.
say. In fact, 2 full-time jobs.
Right.
There isn't here.
Probably more.
Yeah.
That's good. And that's one of I have a WordPress site and it's currently down now because I've got some plugins that I need to get to, but I have too much work. All right. We talked a little about student reactions. You have your students use them as well?
The students are not using it to make content.
Okay.
You know, I'm making the content and students.
They're reacting to it.
Yeah.
Do they love it, hate it?
They like it. I mean, because it's easy to, when it formats right, it's easy to deal with in terms of the organization they like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in general, I think the reaction of students is very positive.
And it's a thing that, because it's digital and it readjusts to things,
That's
they
right.
can do this
Yeah.
on the bus as they're headed to your class, or they can do it at home on their larger screen, or wherever they're at.
Yeah.
Megan.
And I'd also say it's nice because for students who are not as digitally savvy, who sometimes we have older students who are returning to school and who want a printout, and even though our books are like hundreds of pages long, they'll take it to a printer and they'll print it out and they'll use a highlighter and it still comes out in a nice format for them, as opposed to what you get if you had to just like export a WordPress page, which is just like
Great.
hard to look at.
So for the
Or
students,
Canvas page, same thing. If you
Yeah.
try to put that just straight in Canvas, it does not translate well outside of there.
it gives them a sense of agency. They can look at it on this device or on that device, and it looks good on both devices, or on the paper device as well, if they wanted to print it out. And that gives them an extra sense of control over their own learning. So, we always like it when we get to make choices about how we interact with things.
And as well with making it accessible to students, oftentimes you have to have a PDF that a screen reader will be able to read, and we had a student who needed a screen reader last year, and it seemed to work well with
Great.
the PDF output for her.
So Pressbooks has accessibility to a certain extent built in.
And another thing that's nice about it is that in the web version, unlike a printed PDF, if you have something like the Chrome plugin that will change your font on your screen to a dyslexia-friendly font called Open Dyslexic, or other kinds of accessibility tools, it plays nicely with those too. So it'll automatically read, if you have that plugin, unlike if you had an embedded PDF or you're using like the Adobe Digital Editions
Right.
proprietary material, you can get it to just automatically and nonchalantly say, oh, this is more accessible for you.
So again, more options, more control for the students to deal with that, including things like, I want to see it on a bigger font size. You can't do that with a paper copy, but you can do that with the digital link. Good.
Can I just, so if it's embedded in Canvas, students enrolled in the course can see it. What if you want to make it available to a larger public?
Great. And this is a question, Laura wrote something as well, and I wonder if that's a similar question, because she is dealing with farmers market people all over, at least Wisconsin and perhaps the Midwest. But yes, sharing options. Who can talk about sharing options? It does not have to be in Canvas only. Our e-journal, for example, for the active teaching lab is open to everybody. And I think a lot of the ones are open to everybody. How
Actually, you can make it public or private, and you can make it private with a password. That's how ours are. They're password protected, and then you can make it just so you can see it.
Yeah.
I'm going to repeat that. You can make them public or private, and including private with a password. So 3-level options: public,
Public with a password.
private, where you need to know the URL to find it, or private with a password, where you need to know the URL and a password.
And I should note that you can put passwords on chapters too.
Oh.
So that's what I was saying before. I have two, because I have a treatment group and a control group. They have two different things. They get one place to go, but two different things. They get the password that they need.
So you can actually also control what parts they access and reveal. If they've passed the quiz here, they get the reveal to the next chapter. They find the password for that. And so you can kind of control which way they go through that as well. Excellent.
And how do you send them a link and they access it, or do you find it through Google, or how do you, if you want it to be publicly available?
Any link. You can just send them a link. In the active teaching, the activity sheet, it's just a bit.ly link that we've created, but it can also be just a copy and paste URL link as well. And Margaret, can you read Lauren's question?
Sure, I can read Lauren's question. Lauren says, what is the user experience like when a course uses multiple platforms to provide information and to engage with students? How do students respond when you use Canvas and Pressbooks and potentially other tools for just one class? She says, I realize that it depends on how you use each tool, but I am constantly conscious of the user experience because most of my students will take the certification class as an additional component of their second job. So I think the question is really about, is it too complicated to start integrating so many pieces, or is there a natural flow?
That's an excellent question. And Lauren's watching each week to give us feedback as we make our remote sessions more and more complicated. So she's distinctly aware of complexity. Thank you, Justine. Thoughts on that? Do you find students that say, oh my gosh, what do I do now? What is this extra thing? Now I have to learn hypothesis. Now I have to learn H5P. Now I have to learn tables, press tables, table press.
Well, they're currently not editing, so they're not learning all of that. But what we found, and we have, a website where we post certain of our resources, and we have Pressbook where we have other resources, but everything's linked through Canvas. Students basically don't know those other sites are independent sites, and we ask them, do you ever go to Anatomy Central where we post our dissection instructions? What's that? We have no idea. They click on a link in Canvas and they get to all these various places. So if you're organized well in Canvas as a centralized site, you're good.
So it's for the user experience, it's just Canvas. It's a link within Canvas. It's like the web.
Yep.
They click on things, other things happen. You go to one page on CNN, you can hit certain things and move around, and you go to another page and different things happen. So it's sort of a natural extension of the web, except the single point of entry can be through Canvas. So they don't have to learn new tools. They don't have to find a new password or login unless you've got one locked down. So it is a fairly simple, intuitive experience.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I appreciate you sharing that. I think there's pros and cons to either way, and that perhaps you'd mention it, is that they access the resource through Canvas, but once they're out of your classroom, they say, hey, I remember this great resource, how do I get to it? And so I don't know if you want to have some dual posting as a resource page or something that they can download for the future. Otherwise, it's in that capsule of your class.
Right.
And I guess the other challenge that I've seen is that instructors, not anyone here, but instructors sometimes are challenged with how to link things or load things or include things in Canvas so that it is seamless. And I was in a class where the instructor just literally opened up everything because students could not get to the assignment. Students didn't even know there was an assignment, kind of, because if you don't know Canvas, right, you could have put up an assignment but not published it or whatever, and she just opened everything up, which then opened up what appeared to be previous iterations of the course that it was built from.
Oh no.
And so like the assignments page, which normally has the grades of the submissions, it's calculating the grades now based on previous semester.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was like, oh my gosh, so you really gotta know what you're doing, which I'm sure you do, but so a lot to keep in mind and a lot of testing probably that you've probably done.
And I think, let me just re-emphasize that. When you do your testing, I'll re-emphasize it with a question. When you test it, do you just test it yourself, or do you send it, the two of you work together, and Margine involved sometimes in yours as well, and
Not theirs.
not there, somebody else, okay.
You know, that I think that's a main negative that I have about Pressbooks, is that when it's in Canvas and you want to use the student view in Canvas, you don't have access to exactly what students see in terms of the Pressbooks that they're looking at. And so, you know, I don't know, Andrew, whether that's something that, you know, is difficult to implement or difficult to get to, but it would be very useful, because you know, like people say, well, this doesn't you know, work the way you said it would, and then I don't have any way of troubleshooting, you know, exactly why it doesn't work, you know, because I can't see what they see.
Right.
So
a good potential use is make sure that somebody else sees it in student view
As an actual student, yeah.
and look over their shoulder and try to experience it with them. But in some ways, that's a good perspective. Even, you know, whenever I write something, I'll look at it from sort of a specialist's eyes, and I'll miss all kinds of things. But if I give it to a friend who's not in my discipline to look at it, they see all kinds of things that I'm like, oh, I wouldn't have noticed that. Yeah. And that student view is, I think, really important.
Is it possible to get like an actual fake student for your class to engage?
There's a couple of routes. First of all, yes, but we don't want to. I think last I remember as being part of the Learning EW response, we don't want to go too overboard with that, because the whole problem, the reason we took that capability away is because it was getting out of control and people were having access. You know, they'd start sharing around this fake account around all the professors, and people can now kind of get into courses where they shouldn't have any business being.
And that was a registrar's, if I'm remembering correctly,
that was from
not a. It's not a
office.
do-it decision.
Yeah.
It was what we were.
So, but what you can do, and I think about this may seem, it probably sounds more complicated than it really is, but we can give you a sandbox. In a sandbox, you are God King. You can add students to sandboxes.
Yeah.
You cannot add students to officially sanctioned SIS-generated courses. So we give you a sandbox, you port your stuff over, you start working out of your sandbox, you can add a faculty member as a student there, and then they see it as a student, and then you go about your process.
And that's actually a really speedy export. You just
Yes.
Oh yeah. I'd say, and if you need another sandbox just for the purpose of doing this, let us know. We make you a sandbox, and you just earmark it sandbox for testing, whatever. You have it set up, and yeah.
Once I got it, please send an email to
Learning EW support at wisc.edu. We only have a few minutes left, amazingly. What have we not talked about? Student-curated content? Something else? What should we talk about in the next few minutes? New questions that have arisen. Let's talk about student-curated content, because that looks like fun. You've done it?
I haven't done it in my own classes, but like it's very in tune with I've worked with people who've done it with their students in my capacity as someone who worked on OER, Open Educational Resources. But there's also a whole philosophy around like bring your students into this process of co-creating the learning materials that other students will use. So there is an active community of people who are talking about pros and cons of different strategies for this. So I would say there's a really beautiful link in the lab notes that says a guide to making open textbooks with your students, and that has some lovely insights. One of which was the Anne Martin's course examples. Oh no, Anna's course example.
Anna Narowski?
I'm
Oh,
not
yeah,
sure
there
which
is.
of the examples are included in that. The text itself, there's like a chapter feature. I think it was Anne Smart Martin's class.
Okay.
You can read a narrative about it.
And involving the students is also good because in the 3 different levels of active learning, there's active, there's constructive, and then there's interactive. Active is just doing things, taking notes. Constructive is when they start to create a thing. And creating a Pressbooks causes them to say what's important, what's not important, and they do a lot of this higher level synthesis and evaluation, the top levels of Bloom's creation in order to do that. And then interactive is even better because now they're solving problems with their peers and saying, having arguments of like, should we include this? No, we shouldn't. Yes, we should. And deciding what is really the best thing to make here to solve the problem of teaching somebody else how to do this. And we've all heard like, to learn something, you should teach it. And there's a little bit of that goes in the creation of that. And having students create it would be a great way to get to that.
I'll add one more link at the very bottom of this page.
Okay.
It's from an exhibit at the Chazen Museum called What's in a Jug? And the grad students in this class were the ones who were coming up with the ideas about what H5P activities would best help other learners understand like the beauty of these objects or the complexity of these objects. So I thought that was a really inspiring thing because they were like throwing out ideas like, what if we made an interactive map like this? And I was like, okay. Like, look at the H5P website, like go wild. And they did, and it was beautiful. So,
Very
yeah.
good. We are out of time. Thank you all for coming and having a lively conversation. I'll remind you to please check a few boxes, and if you have any questions that are left over here, you can either put them here, you can put them down in the notes. These notes will be accessible for the indefinite future, so if you want to revisit those, please do so. And again, any questions that you have about Pressbooks, the email address is learnuwsupport@wisc.edu. At do.wisc.edu.
That's right.
Very good. Thank you again.
Yeah. Right.
Andrew, how has it been going?
It's been going well.
I'm sad I can't make it to I wasn't able to make it to the last, to the user group because I was at a conference, but how did it go?
It was good.
Yeah.
It went really well.
Oh, good.
A lot of these lovely folks showed up.
Yeah. It's the best.
Yeah.
Good.
Andrew and Naomi, is it possible, I assume you're the two experts, to have within a Pressbook chapters that only certain people can edit? Or do you have, or like are all authors, contributors, whatever you call them? Can you do that, or do you have to have, let's say for a student input, would you have to have a dedicated book that all those people are capable of editing? Or could we have like select chapters in our main book that students can edit, but they can't do the main book?
Andrew, have you heard?
I'm looking into it right now at this moment to see if that is a thing that I can do.
My
Because that would be
instinct is
nice to
no.
have it all contained in a single book
Yeah.
instead of a separate book.
If you can make books out of books.
Yeah.
We make
Okay.
volume